I'm always open to learning about new things, about how to make your life more rewarding, how to get more enjoyment in your everyday life, how to give yourself a feeling of progress, like that you're going somewhere with your life, not just standing still and stagnating, and also just in general feeling better about yourself and what you do. And lately I've realised a few things regarding that I wanted to share with you, especially about how developing your interests is key here, and that's what this video is about. First, just a couple of things that I wanted to mention before getting into the real part of the video. One of them is that I will be using piano playing as an example throughout the whole video, just because that's something that made me realise these kind of tips were useful, and it's like from my point of view, that is what I've been doing myself, and that's how I've implemented those tips that I'm about to share. But I think they can be really general, and I think they can be applicable to a lot of different interests, because people are different and they have different interests. And it also works with people who have different attitudes and relations to their own interests. And by that I mean, some people barely know what their interests are and they don't really spend much time doing them and developing them, and then other people again are really concerned about their interests and just doing that all the day long and spend a lot of time on it and energy on it. And I think for both of those people, but maybe especially importantly for the first group, this video is useful. And it also applies whether this is a new interest that you have, or a fairly new one, or one that you've been doing for years and been interested in for years, like piano is for me. So let's get into all of them. One of the sneak peek ones, and a fairly obvious one, is to set aside time to do it and do what your interest is. So especially if you're one of those people that isn't really super involved with your interest, you're thinking like, okay, I might be kind of interested in painting, I think that's kind of cool, but I don't really do it a lot, and when I do it it's nice, but it's not much more than that. Well, remember then to set aside time to do it more often. For one, you will improve. Secondly, if it's something you like doing, and that's why it's your interest, why shouldn't you do more of it? So that's another thing. And it also just helps make your life in general a bit better if you do more of the things that you like. And also, as you progress and learn more and improve your skill in that certain interest, then it can become more important to follow the later tips. So those are the ones I'm about to get into right now. One of them is just to invest some sort of money. It doesn't even have to be much, but just some sort of money into that interest. And that is one of the reasons for doing it, is that you can learn more from people who know a lot. So for instance, I bought a composition course for about $30 or something. It wasn't much, it's just a bit of money that I had put aside so I could spend it on, for example, that course, and that allowed me to improve my skill and learn something from a person that was very skillful in that kind of field. And doing similar things for your own interest is really useful, because then you'll get the opportunity to, well, obviously learn new things, and that gives you more sort of avenues for expressing that interest and for enjoying that interest. And if it's something that you can produce something with, which is for instance composing, then you can create products that you have made yourself and that you can be proud of. So that's why investing is a good idea, but it's also a good idea because it gives you accountability. So say you spent $30, $50 on a course or a book or something related to your interest. That means that you feel like you have to make use of that money. So that means you will watch the course and read the book, definitely, but you'll probably also remember to set aside more time for your interest, because you know that now I actually spent money due to this interest, so that means I have to cultivate it, if not that would be wasted money. And that's just, it's not necessarily 100% rational thinking, but it's how humans think. So giving you a bit of an incentive to spending more time with it is also another reason why investing a bit of money into that interest is a good idea. So as a result of that investment, I've gone from being mainly a passive, so to speak, piano player that I've played in compositions and songs and pieces that other people have created, but I haven't really done any composition at all, just writing down like tiny ideas myself and just small melodies. But with that course, that has helped me to, well, be better first and foremost, but that also comes with practice. So I usually just sit down and maybe I write some melodies. I've also gotten into MuseScore, which is a software for music notation, so I've also written down a bit of the pieces and ideas that I've had, and most of them never really get finished, but it's just like fragments of melodies here and there. But then I'm getting really close to finishing this one piece here that I've been working on. So it's just really rewarding to see something like this that I've created myself just take shape, and I wouldn't have done that, at least I wouldn't have done that as well and as quickly as I've done it now without that course and that investment. So I see that as an absolute win, to be a little mean here, but yeah, I see that as a win, and that's something that I've done recently. And I think no matter what your interest is, almost, there are like some types of courses or books or something related to that you can spend a little bit of money on to help improve yourself and just get more enjoyment out of it. Another thing is to find new parts of that interest that you haven't explored as much. So for instance, to use my piano example again, just piano in general is a pretty broad interest, and there are different styles you can play, and you can also just play yourself and then you can compose. So then I've gotten into more of the composition bit recently, and also just playing different styles can be a thing as well. I've usually not really played any jazz at all, so getting into that and trying a bit of jazz compositions, just playing that for a bit, can also just be a new way for me to explore and then develop that interest and get more out of it. And the same if it's another interest, let's say fishing, which isn't really something I know a whole lot about, but I know you can fish in the sea or you can fish in fresh water and there are different techniques, right, and then rivers and all that. So I'm going to sound stupid now for someone who's really into fishing, but one interest is usually pretty broad and it has like different subcategories, and getting into another one of those that you haven't had as much experience with can be rewarding and allow you to develop that interest. And then kind of related to that, but even more broad as well, is to just seek out new interests, because there are thousands and thousands of possible interests that you could have had and that you haven't had the chance to try, and you will never get the chance to try every interest in the world. But if there are some interests that you're thinking about, like, okay, this hobby sounds cool, maybe I would try that one day, or just something that pops into your head one day, give it a try, because if you don't try it, you don't know if you like it, right? And if you like it, it's a win, because then you can find something else that you like doing, and that will give you enjoyment and just make your life better and more enjoyable. So what I'd like to do is just to make you challenge yourself to try one of those interests that you've been thinking about, and just actually go and do it. Because, as I said, there are so many benefits to it. You can find out if you like it, and if you like it, then you'll make it a more enjoyable life, and then you will also improve skill. You can learn skill through that, and you will also just, normally, there's some kind of community related to every interest out there, and then you can get into that community, maybe make new friends, new connections. So there are mainly just benefits of trying that out. One problem, of course, is that it can be a bit hectic, and you can have problems with managing your time and having time for everything if you get into new interests all the time. But otherwise, I think it just has a lot of benefits and not too many downsides, so that's something you should try to challenge yourself, and if you can. I think just exploring interests and finding new ones is really part of what makes life rewarding, and it's pretty important to do, because then it gives you a sense of progress, as I said in the beginning of the video, because you're learning something new and you're improving a skill that you didn't have before, so you can look back and say, wow, back then I didn't know how to surf at all, and now I'm a pretty good surfer, for instance. And that you can do that both with, obviously, your existing interests and your new ones, improving your skill. But I think there's also something rewarding about trying something new and different. That's a bit, maybe the curious person in me and the adventurer that feels like that, but I think a lot of other people might feel that as well. So that's why it's really rewarding, and I think you should explore new interests from time to time. Now, the ideal structure for this sort of experimenting with and developing interests is what I call a multidisciplinary life, which I've briefly mentioned in other videos as well, which is basically a life where you make it one of your top priorities to explore and develop your interests, your existing and new ones. And I think that's really important. It's obviously not the main or like the only goal of your life, but having that as one of your main goals can be really rewarding, because it encourages you to try new things, develop skills, and above all, just enjoy life, because when you do things that you're interested in, you are enjoying life. And this is kind of an ideal, so it's kind of hard to create, but ideally that's the kind of life that I would want to create for myself, and that maybe you want to create for yourself as well. So just giving yourself time and allowing yourself to try those different interests and setting aside time for all of them is what makes your life in line with that philosophy. So try to, just for the time being, to set aside as much time as you can for doing something that you're interested in. And then obviously we have to do things that we're not interested in, but trying to just set up your life and optimize it for that, for developing your existing and new interests, is something that I think really would change your life. So using that as your attitude, adopting an attitude like that, I think that will really help you get more out of life and just having a more enjoyable way of living. And obviously there are many things that have to fall in place for that kind of life to approach the ideal, but I think just adopting that attitude, as I said, will really play a huge part and will help you on that way anyway. So I hope that these tips have been useful to you and that you're challenging yourself, as I said, to try out a new interest and at least set aside time for developing your existing interests. That's it for today, and I'll see you in the next one.